Falling in love as a femboy feels like drowning and breathing at the same time. Like finding someone who sees all of you and still chooses to stay. Like discovering that the person you thought was impossible to love might actually be worth everything. I'm Nick Scott, and I thought I knew what love was until I met Ryan. Then I learned the difference between someone loving the idea of you and someone loving the reality of who you are when nobody else is watching. It started on the worst possible day. I was having a complete breakdown in the parking lot of a Target at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Crying so hard I could barely breathe. Sitting in my car wearing a purple dress and full makeup because I had been trying to work up the courage to go shopping as my feminine self for 3 hours and kept chickening out. That was when someone knocked on my passenger window. I looked over and saw this guy around my age with kind eyes and messy brown hair. He was holding a box of tissues and looked genuinely concerned about the sobbing person in the car next to his. I rolled down the window expecting him to make fun of me, or ask what was wrong with me, or just walk away when he got a closer look. Instead, he handed me the tissues and said the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to me. Bad day, he asked like it was the most normal thing in the world to find a boy in a dress crying in a parking lot. I nodded because words seemed impossible right then. Want to talk about it? He asked. Sometimes talking to a stranger helps. I promise I am not a creep or anything. Just someone who knows what bad days feel like. Something about his voice made me feel safe in a way I had not felt in months. So I told him everything. About being too scared to shop for clothes as my feminine self. About feeling like I was living half a life because I could only be myself in private. About wanting so desperately to be normal but not knowing how to get there from here. He listened to the whole thing without judgment. When I finished talking, he was quiet for a minute. Can I tell you something? He said finally. You are the most beautiful person I have seen all week. And I work at a photography studio, so I see a lot of people trying to look their best. I stared at him through my smeared makeup and tear-streaked face. Are you making fun of me? I would never make fun of someone for being brave enough to be themselves, he said seriously. What you are doing right now. Sitting here in that dress even though you are scared? That takes more courage than most people have. I am not brave, I said. I am terrified. Being brave does not mean not being scared, he said. It means being scared and doing it anyway. He introduced himself as Ryan Miller and asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. Not as a date exactly, but as two people who might understand what it feels like to be different in a world that does not always make space for different. I said yes before my brain could talk me out of it. Our first coffee date lasted 6 hours. He told me about growing up feeling like he never quite fit in anywhere. About working as a photographer because he loved capturing moments when people looked genuinely happy. About his family who loved him but did not always understand him. I told him about my feminine side and how it felt like the most real part of me, even though it was also the most secret. About feeling lonely even when I was around other people because they only knew half of who I was. Can I see more pictures of your feminine self? He asked toward the end of our conversation. If you are comfortable sharing them, I mean. I showed him photos on my phone. Me in different dresses and outfits. Me with different makeup looks and hairstyles. Me being the person I could only be when nobody was watching. Wow, he said looking through them carefully. You are stunning. Like genuinely stunning. Have you ever thought about modeling? I laughed. Right. Who would want to hire a femboy model? You would be surprised, he said. The world is changing faster than you think. People want to see real beauty, not just the same boring stuff they have been looking at for years. That was the moment I started falling in love with him. Not because he thought I was pretty, but because he saw possibilities for me that I had never seen for myself. We started spending time together almost every day after that. Ryan would pick me up, and we would drive around town talking about dreams and fears and all the things we wanted to do but were too scared to try. He never pressured me to be more feminine or less feminine than I wanted to be. Never made me feel like I had to choose between different parts of myself to make him comfortable. He loved Nick, who worked at the bookstore and wore hoodies and watched sports. He also loved Nikki, who wore pretty dresses and did elaborate makeup and danced around the apartment to pop music. 3 weeks into dating him, he asked me something that changed everything. Would you let me take some professional photos of you? He said. As Nikki, I mean. I have been thinking about it since that first day, and I really want to capture how beautiful you look when you are being yourself. We did the photo shoot at his studio on a Sunday when nobody else would be around. I wore my favorite red dress and he did my makeup better than I had ever done it myself. For 2 hours, he photographed me being more feminine and confident and radiant than I had ever been. When he showed me the pictures, I started crying again. But this time they were happy tears. "Is that really me?" I asked. "That is really you," he said. "That is how you look when you are not trying to hide or apologize for who you are." Looking at those photographs was like seeing myself through his eyes. Someone worth capturing. Someone worth celebrating. Someone worth loving exactly as they were. That night we kissed for the first time. Soft and careful, like we were both afraid the other person might disappear. When we broke apart, he looked at me with such tenderness, I thought my heart might explode. 6 months later, Ryan surprised me by entering some of our photos in a local art show. Pictures of me as Nikki, looking confident and beautiful and proud. Pictures that showed the world what a femboy could look like when someone loved them enough to see their true beauty. The photos won second place. People wanted to know who the model was and if I was available for other projects. Gallery visitors left comments about how refreshing it was to see authentic beauty instead of the same old conventional stuff. See, Ryan said at the opening reception, where I stood next to our photographs feeling nervous and excited and proud all at once. "I told you the world was ready for someone like you." During one quiet evening together, I discovered the Prism Stories website while browsing for feminine sizing guides. I used their calculator and bought a book called My Closet Has Secrets. Reading it with Ryan felt like sharing another piece of my journey with someone who truly understood. Now I model regularly for Ryan's photography business. We specialize in portraits of people who exist between traditional categories. People who are learning to love themselves exactly as they are. What falling in love feels like for a femboy is like finding someone who sees your full spectrum. Someone who loves your masculine moments and your feminine moments and all the spaces in between. Someone who makes you feel brave enough to be yourself in front of other people. It feels like safety and adventure at the same time. Like coming home to yourself while also discovering new possibilities for who you might become. Ryan taught me that love is not about finding someone who accepts your differences. It is about finding someone who celebrates them. Someone who sees your unique beauty as a gift rather than a burden. Before him, I thought being a femboy meant I would always have to settle for someone who tolerated parts of me. Now I know that real love means finding someone who would not change a single thing about who you are. That kind of love makes you want to be braver. Want to take bigger risks. Want to show the world more of who you really are because you finally have someone in your corner cheering you on. Falling in love as a femboy feels like finally understanding that you were never broken. You were just waiting for the right person to help you see how perfectly you fit together. How beautiful you look when someone loves you enough to really see you. It feels like hope made real. Like all those nights you spent alone wondering if anyone could ever love all of you were worth it because they led you to this person. This love that makes everything else make sense. That is what falling in love feels like for a femboy. Like finding your other half in someone who helps you love your whole self.